Like this for the rest of the night.
Very nice. That's good for once in a while, right?
Yeah. With Dayton. Sometimes it goes longer, you know. Good evening. I'd like to call this meeting to order. Ridgewood Village Council Public Workshop. Today's August 1st, 2018. The time is 7:30. Adequate notice of this meeting has been provided by posting on the bulletin board in Village Hall, by mail to the Ridgewood News, the Record, and by submission to all persons entitled to same as provided by law of a schedule, including the date and time of this meeting. Roll call.
Deputy Mayor Knudsen?
Here.
Councilman Seaton?
Here.
Councilman Voigt?
Here.
Councilwoman Walsh?
Here.
Mayor Hache?
Here. Please stand for the flag salute. Please join us in a moment of silence in honor of the brave men and women serving our nation's armed forces and as first responders. Thank you. All right, we'll move to public comments, 3 minutes per person. Good evening.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. Ann Loving, 342 South Irving Street. I came here to ask whether we might be able to get an official update about what's going on at Health Barn. On social media in the last few weeks and as recently as today, there have been all kinds of sort of concerning postings about Health Barn, that the number of visitors on the premises often exceeds the fire code, that there are buses idling and parked up there. I was here for all the meetings when Health Barn was being discussed, and I thought I recalled that there were to be no buses up in that neighborhood. There have been photos posted of giant buses up there. There's also been postings that the tenant is overspreading the leased area. I'm not sure, the gardens or whatever, or the area where the camps are occurring is more than the designated leased area. reports that there's a car there overnight, at least some nights, leaving the question as to whether somebody could be sleeping up there. And the tenants filed criminal complaints against 2 residents. Of course, no probable cause was found, but nonetheless, that happened. And also, alcohol consumption up there, which I'm not sure about the law, whether you're allowed to consume alcohol in a public park or if you have to have a permit to do so. And if they do have a permit, I certainly don't know that. But these are concerning postings. Any of you, which is probably all of you, look at some social media and you've seen some of this. So I'm hoping that the residents can get an official update on what really is going on in the foreseeable future. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else? Public comments? No? All right, that's a light one.
Okay, so we'll start with Ridgewood Water. The first one is a partial award of contract for Southside Reservoir Rehabilitation. This is a 2 million gallon capacity concrete water storage tank. It's located in Glen Rock. The rehab work includes interior and exterior cleaning, exterior patching and coating of the concrete reservoir, miscellaneous improvements, and installation tank mixer to improve water quality, and miscellaneous improvements to the pump station. There were 7 bids received out of 9 that were picked up. DJ Agarian and Associates is the engineer on record for this, and they are recommending, and we agree, to the low bidder, which is Brave Industrial Paint LLC of Long Branch, New Jersey, in the amount of $450,000. There was an apparent low bidder when the bids were open, which was Nuco Painting Corp., but they've since withdrawn their bid as errors were made in its presentation. So that is the recommendation. This is under a U.S. EPA Administrative Order of Consent, and this work must be completed by January 15th, 2019. Move on?
Yep, please.
Sorry, okay. The next one is for an additional award for a contract for pipes, appurtenances, and service materials. We did award this January a contract to Waterworks Supply Company, Brent Material Company, Core and Main LP, Raritan Group, and Capital Supply for the purchase of pipe, appurtenances, and materials required for maintenance of the water distribution system. This is done as a per commodity or per unit price, and so as we use them, we pay that price, and that's why it's awarded to various companies, because we went with the lowest price on each item. At this time, an additional $250,000 is required for Waterworks Supply Company because they provide hydrant, valve, and blow-off project materials, and this was not anticipated at the time of the bid award, so it's vital to maintaining the system, as all of us know after undergoing a tour recently of the water department and learning about the water flushing and hydrant flushing. So that's an award of contract, additional amount for $250,000.
Questions, comments?
Yeah,
Go ahead.
I don't know if we could maybe just get, because this is back in January, just maybe a refresher as to why this wasn't anticipated, because it's actually more than the initial project. So
Correct.
just to,
Yeah, I'll have Dan Timoney come up, our business manager.
How's it going? Okay. So first, I just want to point out it's not a change necessarily. It's there was no not to exceed number in there originally, and because this is just commodity-based, unit-based, this is for hydrants and blow-off assemblies, and that was not anticipated at the time that this was put out. The Water Quality Accountability Act has a lot of things in it that we didn't necessarily know the timeline of, and so now that that's all become more clear, we need to be moving along on that schedule.
Okay, so, so the first paragraph here, it does say with an initial not to exceed value, so you're saying that's incorrect?
Well, the reason being that it is a per commodity line item bid, but under new guidelines from Division of Local Government Services, we have to include an amount not to exceed. Okay. So what Mr. Calby did is he estimated how much we would be spending, but had neglected to include the valve and hydrant flushing in that total amount not to exceed. Okay. And so now, in looking at it, and we're coming up to the time when we're going to have to do the flushing, which is in September probably.
Correct.
He realized that we didn't have enough budgeted for that part of the project.
Okay.
Obviously, next year, when we do this, we'll anticipate that and add it into the overall not to exceed value.
And this only applies to 2018. We would need to come back again to refresh a number for 19, which would obviously
Correct.
be forward-looking and would include this for next year.
Okay, okay, thank you.
So, just a question.
Oh, I'm sorry, go ahead.
Sorry. Thank you. So could this have been done differently as a separate order rather than attached to this?
So it's
Because basically it's a whole different job. I mean, it's not a completely different job, but it is different. It's the hydrants and the blow-ups, right?
Correct. It's hydrants and blow-offs, but it is the companies from whom we purchase these.
So you just tagged on
Correct.
that. Got it. Okay. But it's a separate piece.
Correct.
Got it. Okay. Fine.
So Dan, the $250,000, what is that necessarily? What are we adding? What's that made up of?
So this is specifically for hydrants and
New
yes, hydrants and blow-off assembly. So each year as we do inspections, we find some of them that haven't been replaced for years need to be replaced. And that will vary based on weather conditions, the age of the hydrant or the blow-off. If we find that a neighborhood is having a lot of dirty water calls because it's at the end of a main, then we will be installing blow-offs there. So as we anticipate all of those things happening in the coming months, really, as we talked about, we only have a 3-week window each year to get these in. We have to have the ability to budget for this to get that work done in 2018.
Yeah, and so how many hydrants is that for 250,000 and blow-offs? Do you have a number for that?
I don't, but I can follow up.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah.
Sure.
And do you anticipate that it's going to be similar next year? I mean, the same kind of thing?
I don't know the answer to it, but I can certainly find out.
Okay, good, thank you.
I just had one more thing to add. The number, do you think you will reach that number? Because I know that this question came up when something came up for the police department. It was sort of the same thing. So you buy all different parts, and if you find that hydrants and everything, more of them are in better condition than you thought, and they don't have to be replaced, then you might not hit that number.
Correct.
But you just have to have something in there so you can order the parts as you need them.
Yep, and that's the point of the not to exceed. This is specific to those hydrants and assemblies. So if we don't use them now, that money will not be expended in this current year. We would have to come back and say, now that we know that in 2019 we expect X based on the condition of the hydrants we did this year.
Okay, thank you.
So we took a tour this week of the facilities, and we got a chance to look at the technology that you guys have developed really from within. And I know that one of the things that you guys keep track of is basically asset management and looking
Correct.
at the replacement costs and the possible remaining life of assets.
Right.
And you can therefore develop a schedule of what things you will need. Would something like this, what you're doing now, the technology piece, as you bring in more of that data in, is that going to help with the predictability of what these contracts would look like? So in January, you would have a better idea.
Yes.
And I have to revise this. Is that going to help? Is that part of it?
Absolutely. And so that goes for water mains, that goes for all of this type of equipment. So once we have the cost of these hydrants and assemblies based on their condition into the system, that will be a variable, that'll be an input for the data set that we'll be using for capital planning going forward. So now we know that we've replaced 5% of the hydrants, the useful life of the rest based on that type of the hydrant, what we see happening. We'll have a better idea of what we need to plan for going forward.
I think that technology is going to help us definitely in moving forward. And I think that as they go to the hydrants this year for the or the blow-offs to look at them, that they'll then put it into the system, and then it will be updated within the whole GIS system. So I think that we'll definitely have a better handle on it for 2019. Okay.
Thanks.
Okay. The next one is for the, what is it for? The Ames tank rehabilitation. This is a 520,000 gallon capacity on-grade steel water storage tank. It's located in Wyckoff. It includes, the rehab work includes blasting off existing lead-based paint, employing a containment system, coating the interior and exterior steel surfaces of the tank, installing a mixer, other miscellaneous improvements, as well as improvements to the valve chamber. There were 9 bids received, and 13 had been picked up. DJ Agarian and Associates, again, is the engineer of record. They recommend, and we agree, to award the base bid contract to the low bidder, Brave Industrial Paint of Long Branch, New Jersey. Again, this is under a US EPA administrative order of consent, and the work should be completed by January 15th, 2019. The money is in the Ridgewood Water capital budget. The next one is awarding a professional services contract for proposals were sent out to pre-qualified engineering firms for professional services for the Passaic Valley Water Commission pipeline project. We're evaluating a future connection with PVWC, to provide system resiliency. As you know, we currently have 2 interconnections, one with Suez and one with Hawthorne Water, but both of the existing supplies, they have limitations as well, and they may not always be available. So we're looking to see what will happen if we would interconnect with PVWC. The low price proposal was from Suburban Consulting Engineers of Flanders, New Jersey at $149,175, and they are asking that this be considered as the one to be awarded to.
Do you know the cost of the permanent easement and all of the work that goes into that? Do we have an idea what that costs?
The permanent easement for?
It's listed in here that it didn't cover, right?
In the resolution or in the proposal?
Easements to go over the properties.
Right, the permanent easement, all the work that goes into it.
Yeah, I guess you're asking, I don't know if that has been established yet.
I don't
That
think
would
so
be
yet.
That would be the cost for making the connection going through other
Correct.
properties
Right.
owned by other persons.
I don't believe we're that far along yet. Right now, it's really just about testing water quality to make sure
Okay. Got
that water parameters are consistent and that
And feasibility.
feasible, that they would,
Feasibility, okay,
they would do what we
didn't make
expect.
mention of
Correct.
that cost in there. Okay,
Yep.
great, thank you.
Okay, the next item is awarding a professional services contract for W4 license coverage. We're required to have this under DEP regulations. We did have a W4 licensed operator. That employee has resigned, and so therefore we're going to have a consultant serve in this license role until management staff takes the license test this fall. Hopefully that management staff will pass the test, in which case probably we would need it through the end of this year, because by the time the test is graded and we get the results, it'll probably be December. So that's the plan, is to have him take the test. Hopefully he'll pass, and then we'll no longer need this. But at this point, we are required to have it because DEP requires so. Okay? So now we go on to parking. So, ordinance 3660 and 3661 were introduced in July, and they have a public hearing next week. The one thing I want to mention is that there was an error in that there was a misunderstanding that Saturdays would be 9 a.m. to 6 p.m., and we're actually having them remain at 10 a.m. to 6 p.m. So I just wanted to get consensus of the council, agree that that's what we're going to do moving forward. Also, so that's regarding the hours. And then the rates, I'm just triple checking. My understanding is 75 cents is in all lots on all streets, and even in the CBD area of the Cottage Place lot. Everything is 75 cents per hour. And that's how the ordinance is written, and I'm just confirming that before we move forward. My belief, and if you could just confirm this, Mr. Rogers, my belief is because of the fact that, in essence, we haven't changed the Saturday hours, because they are 10 to 6 currently, and this was written as 9 to 6, that we could amend it on the floor to say 10 to 6, and we're really just maintaining the status quo, so it wouldn't be a substantive change.
I think that, that argument could certainly hold weight, and I think that you could consider it as a non-substantive change that would warrant a reintroduction, so I think you could do that.
Okay, and then obviously we would adopt it as amended on the floor. So we would just change those hours for Saturdays in all the lots to 10 to 6.
And since that's consistent with what exists right now, it
It's
should
what
be.
exists now, exactly.
Now, the CBD employee parking on Cottage,
Right.
we're talking about changing them also to 75 cents.
It was, everything was 75 cents.
The only thing that makes me question that now is with the announcement, since Ken Smith has given notice, that employees, whoever's parking there now, won't be able to park there anymore.
Right.
We're not going to have potentially another 65 cars floating around. I would love to give them the incentive to say, listen, you can't park there anymore.
Right.
Here's another place, maybe a couple of blocks from where you were parking before, but you can park all day, 10 to 6. and
Well,
then-
actually, there'll be 9 to 8.
Well, Saturdays, 9 to 8, and then Saturdays 10 to 6,
Correct.
but at a reduced rate.
What is Ken Smith charging now?
They're charging, I believe, $80 a month.
So I mean, it makes sense, but there's a problem because we're doing that, we're actually encouraging the use of those 65 spaces. There's no ride sharing, but we're going to actually give up those 65 spaces then in our inventory.
Well, they're employee spots anyway, aren't they?
Not
The
all.
yeah, CBD employee spots are in Cottage Place. He's talking just about the CBD employee
CBD
spots.
ones, the one in Cottage.
Oh, so you're not saying increase that?
Not adding them.
Oh, okay, I understand. Okay.
Keeping the
No,
ones
keeping them, but
Understood,
then,
okay.
keeping the pricing.
do you really
where it
want
is
to
now.
keep, do you want to keep it at 25 cents though, or are you going to go to 50?
We'll discuss it.
That's what I want you to do.
I mean, you know what, I mean, I think that at minimum, we have to go to 50 cents an hour because it's a little bit of, the benefit of the garage is for the businesses. And we're essentially, it is a hidden tax to residents of the Village of Ridgewood. And so subsidizing the garage in that piece of it by now keeping it at 25 cents an hour, I think is really almost unfair.
Yeah, I mean, I think if we're increasing all the rates to probably go up the quarter to 50 cents an hour, still incentivizes people to use the spots if they're not already using all of them 100% of the time. And then if we have to adjust things or change things, which I think is the plan once we get the Walker report back, and we see, different pricing scenarios, then that could all change anyway. So this is basically, this whole thing, these rates right now are temporary until we get that report, but we have to start filling the coffers to start paying for the garage, so that's why we're doing this.
So it's my understanding, it's King's, right, that has 65 spots over at Ken Smith? I think they do.
I'm not sure.
I think they do. So when they lose those 65 spots, the question is where they're going to go. And they're going to probably go to the parking lot at, I'm sorry, not at King's, Whole Foods. It's Whole Foods. So that's going to create a problem at Whole Foods. So your suggestion of putting them at, and I think there's a bus that goes back and forth too from Ken Smith to Whole Foods for these people.
A private shop.
Yeah. So if we put them at Cottage Place and we did it at 50 cents an hour, it'd still be the same. It'd be $80 a month. So maybe we just talk with Whole Foods and find out what's going on with those particular employees and where they're going to park, and maybe we suggest they go to Cottage Place for 50 cents an hour.
So, I feel like I'm hyper aware of parking now that I'm on the Chamber's liaison. And there was no one in those spots this weekend. They were empty. the employee spots, empty. I came around the turn and every single one was empty. So my concern is, again, that although that's a great idea, Councilman Voigt, that we're jumping through hoops to help them and to make to make it easier and to try to work with all the employees, and it's still just not working. So, again, if we could do something like that, that's going to fill up all those spots. But is that what we're trying to do? One proprietor's people in that spot. So
No.
I think we just still have a challenge with employees parking in the spots that we've designated for them. I have seen, and have, again, keeping my eye out now, feeding the meter, running out, feeding the meter, and they are employees of businesses in the downtown. So, something's got to give at some point, because either we have to really give higher tickets for that and make it really hurt if you're doing repeat parking and you shouldn't be parking, or we've got to get a better solution, because I think it's not going to make a difference if we make them 50 cents, 75 cents, 25 cents. They're not parking there.
Yeah, I mean, if Whole Foods is already running a shuttle for back and forth to Ken Smith, and then Ken Smith is no longer available, so all that stuff is in place. I guess if we get a better idea, if somebody actually talked to Whole Foods, and then maybe their employees could fill the spots that we already designated in Cottage, and then they could just get bused back and forth there, because like I said, the bus is already running. It's just a few blocks over. And if they have no interest in it, then maybe we just reevaluate the employee spots, because I'm with you, Barney. I mean, you drive around on the weekend and you're looking for a space, and there's nothing on Saturday, and you come by Cottage Place, there's this whole row of empty spots, and you pull in and you're so happy that you found a spot and it says CBD employee, and you can't do it. So if the employees aren't using it, we're really just hurting ourselves, because now we just have these empty spots, and it's even more frustrating for people to see them, because every other spot is filled and they're not generating any revenue because none of the employees are using them. So unless we could fill them like dedicated employees from a business that was big enough like Whole Foods, then maybe we consider just getting rid of them.
Yeah. Heather, is there a way to let the employees through Park Mobile so if they pull in, they're an employee, pull in, they pay with Park Mobile, and they have some sort of an account on Park Mobile, and then we wouldn't have to designate any spots. They could just pull in, they would get if we do a slight discount, they would get the slight discount.
I don't know that we can do that, but they also have the option currently to buy the CBD hang tag.
Yeah, I know.
So they could do that as well, and as opposed to paying the meter. And if you recall, we are going to be putting a kiosk into Cottage Place. So, but still they'll be able to pay by credit card or coin, or they could have the hang tag.
Well, I just want to point out that if the employees are willing to pony up 35 cents extra or 45 cents extra for Park Mobile, then they can pony up the 25 cents extra for us. I mean, they're giving that money to somebody else, so then why wouldn't we just make it full price across the board? And not allowing, I still think we have to designate employee spots, because if you allow employees to have a discount through Park Mobile at all and just say, well, it's open season on all parking spaces, we'll fill all parking spaces at a fraction of the cost, and I guess shoot ourselves in the foot with financing a garage.
Right.
So everyone's okay then, just leaving the spots designated for employees, but not offering the differentials that?
Leave it at 75 cents.
Leave it at 75 cents?
Heather, could you check with Whole Foods, see what they're doing with it?
I can check with them, but again, that's their issue. They're a private entity, and it's their responsibility to find a place for their employees to park. I can certainly check with them, though.
Yeah.
Sure.
I'm
but,
just concerned it's going to create an issue over at the Whole Foods parking lot. They put 65 there. I mean, the residents going in and out of there are going to get really upset because they won't be able to find a parking place.
You mean in the Whole Foods lot?
Yeah.
That Whole Foods wouldn't be able to have their shoppers park?
Well, if they have 65 more employees parking there, which they didn't have
But
before.
that's their business model. That's their issue. They created a business environment that is a very successful business model, but they created it in an area that doesn't have sufficient parking to meet their needs. So I agree with Heather. I don't know why that's our burden. I mean, and who's paying Ken Smith right now? Is it Whole Foods or is it the individual employees? Not that it would matter, but if they're, Whole Foods is the one that has to find their parking, meet their parking needs. That's not our job, because then we would be meeting the parking needs for the banking customers, for all private entities.
Well, actually, it's a good exercise, and it was just to ask, what are they doing with it?
I can
agree.
certainly contact them, I will, and just find out if they have, what their solution is.
Yeah.
But I need to know going forward, because we currently have it at 75 cents everywhere, including CBD. So I just need to know if we're amending that or not next week, so that we can either adopt it, or, and I don't know if that's substantive, it may be to reduce it to 50 cents, I don't know. So we may have to then put that off for another month, but,
Well, let's leave it as is, because
Okay.
we need to get the
Okay.
clock moving here.
right, okay, so
And
we'll
then
do
just,
75 cents.
Saturday stays the same, 10 to 6.
Correct.
And we're still designating the spaces, so it
Yes,
still
we
makes
are.
those spaces available.
Correct.
So it's a little bit more expensive,
And
but it still means they're there.
Correct, and as you recall, there's also CBD spots in Walnut. So there's Cottage or Walnut they could
And
go
if we
to.
also wanted to enter into some sort of arrangement with anybody, not just Whole Foods, who wants to purchase the hang tags, they can still park at those spots and not have to be subject to the meters.
We currently still have the hang tags, and so they can come in and get it for their employees. Again, they can be switched between employees, so if they work different shifts, so we still have that option,
Okay.
Yeah.
okay?
So the only, just kind of one final comment that I'll make. If the employee spots are going to continue to remain vacant, is there any way that we can, do a quick survey, can our enforcement officer say, they were there at whatever the first shift is, noon, and there were 20 spots vacant, or there were 30, maybe over the next few weeks, do a little survey to see if they're even using them, because you know what? If they're not using them and they're vacant, we should just take them back for the general public.
And we have taken some back
I know.
already for the general parking. I would prefer to do it in September, only because
Yeah.
I think in summer, we may not
Yeah.
have as many people overall, whether it be employees or, shoppers, diners. So if we could wait till September, we could certainly have them do that. We'll have them take a look now as well.
Yeah, I mean, it doesn't hurt to
but
just start collecting
Sure,
the data.
they could start, and then we'll bring that information to you.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's a good idea too, a good way to go forward, because that way, once we get the Walker report back and we decide to make whatever changes we're gonna make and make them more permanent, we
Right.
could do that alongside, and we could either take them away or do
Sure.
whatever we need to do with employee parking based on the usage.
Okay.
Heather, what's the plan as far as letting the residents know and the rest of the community as to when this is going to be effective? I think it's September
I'm sorry,
4th.
say it again. I
So
apologize.
what is the plan of making the residents known that this is going to be effective?
I'm going to send out an e-notice, as well as we'll put it on the website, as well as, the Chamber and Guild are aware of it.
Yep.
So, other than that, I mean, they can certainly, if they want to, they could put it out in their stores or shops or restaurants, letting people know. I can certainly ask the Chamber and Guild to do that. But that's basically what we're doing.
Okay.
Okay, and obviously, there's going to be signage in the lots once we move to this.
Yeah.
In addition, recall that we are also implementing the kiosks at the same time. So it's going to be in the Cottage Place lot and on Broad Street. And we already have it in Chestnut, so.
We could deploy our message boards, like
We could.
okay.
It's a very short amount of space we have, but we can certainly do that.
Okay.
We could do that, sure.
We could post it on Facebook, social media. We
That
can
would
share
be
it.
helpful,
Okay.
yes. Okay? All right. So the next one is parking on Overbrook Road. As you recall, there was some concern that with parking on both sides of Overbrook, it was a very narrow passageway. So what's been proposed is that on Overbrook Road going north, from North Irving to North Van Deen, there would be parking prohibited at all times. And then also going south from 9 a.m. to 3 p.m., Monday through Friday, there would be no parking during Monday through Friday again, during school days, I believe. Is that correct, during the school year? So that would be from, we'll make sure it's worded that way, from September through June. So also this evening you received a few emails from people. We had sent out letters to those on Overbrook Road. We did receive responses, and actually all of them were very much in favor of doing this. They also said they didn't care which side it was, they just felt it should be one side of the street. And, one of them just said thank you in capital letters. So I think it looks like, at least for those who responded, that they're very much in favor of this change.
Yeah, so presently they don't have any parking. There's no parking from 9 to 3, Monday through Friday. So they're not complaining that they can't park during the day, which is good. I think actually we owe Nathan a thank you. I think he's the one who brought this forward and made similar observations, so good for us. Good. I'm happy to see so many people responded.
It was
when
nice.
I first saw my packet, I was a little worried. I thought nobody responded. Okay, good. Thank you.
Okay, the next one is parking meter hours at the train station lot. When we changed the meters, we forgot that currently the train station is 6 a.m. to 6 p.m., so we have to change it 6 a.m. to 8 p.m. So that we will introduce, and then also Saturday has to be 10 a.m. to 6 p.m. So we're going to introduce that next week, and this would also be for the park and ride lot, because that's 6 a.m. to 6 p.m., so it would be 6 a.m. to 6 p.m., 10 a.m. to 6 p.m. on Saturdays. And so we're going to introduce it next week. If you would like, we could have a special public meeting on September 5th, which is our work session, so that we could adopt it then, and it could be effective by the end of September, as opposed to waiting till October to have it effective. Again, it's only for these two lots, which in the preparation of the former ordinance, we had neglected to realize that it was 6 a.m. to 6 p.m. Okay? So we'll do that. The next one is establishing the multi-space kiosk in new locations. Again, this is in, as I've mentioned before, it's going to be in Cottage Place. It's going to be on Broad Street. And we already have it in Chestnut. So,
Wait, Cottage?
both Cottage Place and also what's called Cottage Place Annex, which is
Right, I
between
know,
the Gap
that,
and
right.
Gilsenan. So all of that, again, the meters are staying at 3 hours for the annex area. The Cottage Place itself is going to now be 9 a.m. to 8 p.m., so it's 11 hours. So there you can park for up to 11 hours.
Okay, but where did you say the kiosks were going?
Oh, okay, it's going to
That's all
go,
I was asking.
the exit from the annex, like
Right.
there by East Ridgewood Avenue. On Cottage Place, it's going to go the exit onto Cottage Place.
Okay.
And is there a second one there, Bob, in Cottage Place? Okay, yeah, so then there's going to be one halfway down in Cottage Place. And then also on Broad Street, there are going to be 3, one on the side by the train station, and then one halfway down on Broad, and then one further, about equidistant.
How many total on Broad?
5? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 6. Yeah, total,
but on Broad
new,
Street.
6 new. Oh,
3.
3 total
3.
on Broad.
I think we should do 2 and 2, 2 on each side.
The one by the train station is a lot shorter, because you have
Yeah, with
the,
the sidewalk, you're saying?
well, and you have the taxi stand and everything, so it's not as many spaces. The one on the other side really needs 2, or 3, because it is big.
And the one at the annex will be placed where?
Going out onto East Ridgewood.
So closer to the exit by the... okay.
Correct. And because we don't want people to get confused, we're going to have very good signage there, because if they park in the annex, they have to realize it's a 3 hour, And then in the main lot of Cottage Place, it's 11 hours.
Right.
So they just have to be sure. And again, the kiosks are great because you can pay by coin, by credit card, or by Park Mobile. You can still park by Park Mobile. So
And what's the date of implementation of this?
September 4th.
That's going to happen September 4th?
Yep.
Okay, for the kiosk, okay.
So, and as far as I know, we are on track to get the kiosks in time and get them installed. So the signage and everything else we'll have up, and, you know, obviously we'll encourage people to park, and if they're confused, you know, we'll assist them. So we will have our PEOs there to help in the first week or so, 10 days, getting used to it, because it is going to be a change, obviously.
Right.
One last question,
Sure.
I guess, maybe. You said that the meters were going to stay. Is that going to be temporary until people get used to the kiosks? Or are we
No,
going to
the meters are going. The meter heads
The
are
meter
going.
heads. Yeah, all right. So you meant just the
The
poles.
stanchions will be there, but the meter heads will be gone.
Oh, okay. That's good, because that would kind of...
No, the meter heads are gone.
Okay, good. Thank you.
So you'll be putting signs on those
Right.
stanchions that says
Correct.
kiosk?
Yes, and we're going to have information on the stanchion themselves, and it'll say pay at kiosk, and it'll have an arrow.
Okay.
So that's the plan.
Good.
As well as signage, actual signage, signs.
Heather, just as we're talking about this parking in the kiosk, and we're going to be talking about maybe adding spots to the train station lot.
Mm-hmm.
So, you know, I'm thinking now, if somebody buys the hang tag, there's no, you can buy the hang tag and you can park in any lot, including the train station lot. So if Whole Foods individuals buy that, if they're residents, what's to keep them from parking in the train station lot?
Well, right now, we don't have any of those that are the train station lot. We've sold the max.
No, I know, but for next year.
Next year,
So if you're
I
an
think
employee
next
of
year-
Whole Foods and a resident of Ridgewood,
Yeah.
you could essentially buy a
Right.
hang tag, and it's almost the equivalent, it's almost exactly, right? The amount of,
I think next year, we're going to have to
$80.
think it through anyway.
no, it's not, right, is it? 80 month, right, so it's,
160.
right, so they could essentially fill up the train station lot.
Well, the other thing we can look at also is that, you know, you may want to increase the prices of some of the hang tags. We'll look at that in September. And that's up to you. And again, we're going to have to kind of rethink it anyway, because Hudson Street is not going to be available the entire year next year.
Yeah.
You know, so we're working on all of that, and
Yeah.
we're going to have a solution prior to it happening. But we certainly need to discuss further as to the hang tags, how we're going to price them, are we going to issue them for 6 months, you know. So we'll work on that. We have some time.
Yeah, because I think if it were me, and I worked at Whole Foods, I'd buy the hang tag and park at the train station and walk a block.
Well, first off, the person would have to be a resident to purchase the hang tag,
Correct.
correct? And we would have to establish maybe somewhere on, when we're filing the paperwork for hang tag, that in fact somebody is a commuter, that they're not a central business district employee.
And
that
actually,
would make-
that is on the application.
Yeah, because you can't really, you're not permitted to make that purchase. I mean, you could do it and sneak in and then get caught or something, but, I mean, technically would be prohibited, so.
Right.
Right.
So, okay.
Just one question, I think I sent an email to you about, with the kiosks. If we had any communication with the kiosk company and how they've dealt with other communities where they have implemented these, how do they deal with the issue of people who have mobility issues? To get to and from their vehicle, to get to the kiosk and back to where they need to go, how have they dealt with that type of situation?
Bob, have you had contact with them? I'll have Bob Rooney come up, our Parking Utility Director, CFO.
Because in parking lots, it's sort of easier because you're going to put these by the entrance and the exit of the parking lots.
Right.
So you have to go through there anyway. But for the on-street, how have communities dealt with this issue with residents who have mobility issues?
So there's no set answer. It depends. Heather and I, Jimmy O'Connell from Signal, walked North Broad to look and see if there was any problems. And
I think we determined that there was only one section that could impact somebody in a wheelchair if they had to get to that location. So we're going to level that off so that it's, the entrance to or access to that kiosk is not impeded by that hill. But other than that, it's flat, all the sites that we put it on. But in talking to Calais, they said there is no set standard. It's just a matter of every community and how they're set up. So we are cognizant of it, and obviously, as we progress, if there's issues, we'll have to deal with them. But right now, we think we're okay.
And not always, but many times, if there is someone who's disabled, they come with someone who is able-bodied. I know it's not always, but it does occur often that someone else comes with them. But again, there was just one section of one sidewalk that kind of sloped, and that we're going to level off so that it's not a situation if someone, let's say, were in a wheelchair or on, using a cane, that they wouldn't feel uneasy on the surface to pay at the kiosk.
And they actually have a kit that levels it off so that it's not, the security's still there, it's still fastened to the ground and can't be moved.
And it won't be a tripping hazard or anything like that for anyone else.
That's exciting.
Okay. So the next, we're moving on to budget. So the first one is a portable radio purchase, 10 portable radios for the police department. This is the third purchase in a multi-year replacement program, and after this purchase, a little over 50% of our officers will have the new radios. It's under New Jersey state contract number for Motorola Solutions out of Paramus, and it's an amount not to exceed $30,940.50. The next one is awarding a contract for 2 Tahoe pursuit vehicles. This again is under state contract. It's to be awarded to Day Chevrolet, which is a partner of Municipal Equipment Enterprises. This state contract actually expired May 26th, but we put in a letter of intent to purchase pending council approval and the availability of funds. This is an amount not to exceed $72,649. These will replace 2 Crown Victorias, 2011. They either will be repurposed to other departments or declared surplus and auctioned.
Heather, I have a question.
Yes.
This seems counterintuitive, a Chevy Tahoe as a pursuit vehicle? I mean, an SUV as a pursuit vehicle?
Chasing somebody on foot.
Yeah, they make it as police vehicles, they do.
Yeah, but, I mean,
Are these supercharged or what?
They are, police vehicles are, yes.
The Chevy Tahoe
the
has a big
Tahoes
engine?
are going to be,
Yeah.
Yeah. They're specifically police vehicles.
I know, it just seems like an SUV, should we be using SUVs in pursuits? I mean, I don't know that we have that many pursuits. Maybe we can get the statistic how many pursuits we have. A Chevy Tahoe.
It's not your off the line Chevy Tahoe.
Right.
They've got a number of different things
Yeah.
to.
I owned a
most
Tahoe
of
for 6 years, and it
You
does
wouldn't
not seem
you
like...
wouldn't pursue
I didn't
anybody.
pursue anybody, but I just can't see how that,
And if
even
you were pursued, you
supercharged,
were
it
always caught, right?
was a pursuit vehicle, so, I don't know. Anyhow.
Okay. The next is for a purchase of 2 Motorola mobile radios for the Chevy Tahoes. This is being purchased through the 2018 capital for an amount not to exceed $9,242. Obviously, this will give them the ability to communicate with all towns and county agencies around them. This is, again, Motorola radio out of Paramus. And the final one concerning this is the emergency vehicles and lights for the Chevy Tahoes. This is under state contract as well. It's emergency accessories and installation. It's emergency light sirens, prisoner partition parts, as well as painting and striping, in an amount not to exceed $34,864.
Heather, that seems like an awful lot of money to...
With which one?
This one, to put lights on, sirens.
In the aggregate, yeah.
That's, you know, close to, I don't know, 17.5 per vehicle. Is that expensive to do that?
Is it,
Painting,
State
it just,
it's
it
under
seems like a lot of
state,
money.
it's under state contract, I'm sorry, what was the question?
My question is, it just seems like an awful lot of money for what they're putting on the vehicle.
Well, again, it's mounting and putting on the emergency lights, the sirens, installing the petitions, and then also painting and striping. So it includes all of those things. So it's about, it's about 17,000 per vehicle, you're right.
No, I think,
and if it's
or
under
I thought he was asking what the total cost per vehicle with all the
With everything?
Bells and whistles.
accoutrement.
Yeah, 35, so it's...
Well, if you add them all
So it's
together,
17.
it's 72,
plus
6,
17
and
plus
the
5, plus
92, so that's 82,
50 plus thousand.
and then another 34. So it's 100 and, what, 12, 13, is that right? Approximately? I'm doing it in my head, so I may be wrong.
Well,
yeah,
It's the pursuit package. That's really what it is.
pursuit.
Again, it's all under state contract.
Maybe you could practice
so-
pursuit, and when they come
I
in.
just don't say it.
Okay. Okay, ready to move on? The next is bulletproof vests that have lived their useful life. We can use bulletproof vests for 5 years. After the bulletproof vests are done, we cannot sell them, we cannot repurpose them to another department, so we actually just destroy them. So all of these have been either used daily for 5 years or are outdated. Some of them date back to the early 1990s, actually, which we just had in storage or something, so we're getting rid of those as well. The next one is awarding contract for a chipper truck chassis. This is for our Parks Department and Shade Tree Division. This is a Western Star chassis. It will be used as a chipper truck with multiple attachments. This is through the Educational Services Commission of New Jersey Cooperative Purchasing, and it's not to exceed $109,051 from Hudson City County Motors of Secaucus. The next item is a resolution for a Toro Grandmaster ride-on lawnmower. This is a Bergen County bid, cooperative bid at not to exceed $26,027.33. It will allow the Parks Department to cut the grass faster and safer. It has zero turn capability and rear discharge, so the possibility of debris discharging will be reduced compared to a side discharge. So the next one after that is the HVAC upgrade of Village Hall. There were 10 bids that were picked up and 3 bids were received. They were examined by the village's consultant, Land Associates. They are recommending the award of the contract to the lowest responsible bidder, which is WHL Enterprises of Metuchen, New Jersey. The amount is $251,400, which includes the base bid plus alternates 3A and 3B. Land Associates was contracted with in October of 17 to look at the improvements to the existing HVAC system, AC system, improvements generated from building complaints where some offices were very warm, others were very cold. The fact that we had temperature control issues, that was identified in our footprint study, and also LAM found in their review that the system condition and operation could certainly be improved. So we're looking forward to getting this job done.
Heather, is there going to be, how's temperature control going to work? Because there's constantly complaints about the senior lounge and the youth center are always really, really cold, and apparently you have to go through some incredible challenge to lower or raise the heat.
Right. My understanding is with this improvement, it's going to be easier to adjust, and hopefully we won't have those big swings in temperature. It'll be more moderate throughout the building. I don't think, my understanding is, I can't 100% guarantee it, but I will get back to you, is that I don't think individuals can, turn the thermostat, because that's going to just cause havoc with the system. but there will be certain designated people, I think, through our signal department who will be able to adjust the heat or air conditioning as necessary.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. So the next one is furnishing and delivering of sodium bisulfate solution and sodium hypochlorite solution for the water pollution control facility. This is an annual bid. This actually was bid last year. We had 5 holders and 4 responding bidders. And as a reminder, Maine Pool and Chemical Company was the successful low bidder last year. So this is the second year of a 2-year contract at the same price, which is $49,040.
Okay.
The next one is for laboratory services for the water pollution control facility in Graydon Pool. This again is the second year of a 2-year contract. It was awarded last year to the sole bidder, Garden State Laboratories of Hillside, New Jersey, in an amount of $15,773.15. Again, this will be allocated in the operating budgets for next year. The redesign of the train station, hold on. Yep, redesign of the train station parking lot. The next is 3 capital ordinances. So one is redesign of the train station parking lot, one is a reappropriation of funds for acquisition of stretchers for EMS, and the third one is purchase of a hook lift body for the Parks Department. So Emergency Services had asked for $25,000 for the refurbishment of the suspension on ambulance number 11 and $80,000 for the purchase of 2 Stryker power load stretchers. That when they went to get the suspension refurbished, they found that the parts are no longer available. In addition, they found that the cost of the stretchers was actually much greater than they had anticipated. They needed another $15,000. So what this ordinance will do is reallocate the funding from the ambulance suspension to the power load stretchers. And so the stretcher funding will now be $95,000 and we'll be able to purchase them. There is a new capital ordinance, which is the $58,000 for the purchase of 1 hook lift body with all accessories to be used as a chipper truck with multiple attachments. Again, this is what we just discussed with the award of the chassis. So this is a new capital ordinance for $58,000. And then the next new ordinance is $330,000 for the train station parking reconfiguration. As you recall, the New Jersey State Historic Preservation Office has given their approval to our plan, option 2. This is a reappropriation of funds from various capital ordinances. So, any questions on these?
Yeah,
Okay.
on the Stryker load stretchers,
Yes.
it says that they were $80,000 for 2 of them, and then they found out the price increased significantly. So do we know that it was $80,000 to begin with, and all of a sudden Stryker said, hey, we're going to add another $50,000?
Well, $80,000 is what we had budgeted for in the capital budget when you approved the capital budget. And then when they actually went to determine the cost, they were actually more than they anticipated. We do have Chief Lillo here. He could come up and explain that process if you'd like.
Yeah, that'd be great. Thank you.
Good evening, everybody. Yeah, basically what it was is because this capital ordinance took time to get approved and prices went up, we're going to be fighting another price increase come October 1st. So when we originally got our prices, we were looking at $80,000 plus installation costs. When we went out, because this is a sole, the vendor is a sole proprietor, there's no other competition. This is what the current prices are coming back at now when we went out and spec'd them out after the capital ordinance was passed. So by shifting that money from one capital account to the other, it gives us the money that we need now to go ahead and purchase the actual stretchers at this price.
So, Tony, do you think they're sticking it to us?
Say again?
Do you think they're sticking it to us? In other words, we already, you knew what it was, and all of a sudden, oh, by the way, it's another 15,000.
Right, no, I think it's because of the time frame that, because we've been planning this for a couple of years, so I think with the time frame, there was some increases. I think it was more of a issue on our part with not following up
Yeah.
enough time with them once we went into the capital budget. I don't know if they're sticking it to us, but unfortunately, anytime you're dealing with medical supplies and medical equipment, it's difficult because they know that they have you over a barrel in some cases, so.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Wait, I have a question.
sorry.
So I may have missed it, and I'll apologize in advance, but what happened to Ambulance 11 and its suspension?
The suspension system on the current chassis, because it's a 2003, could not be upgraded.
Okay,
So it would have had to be a 3-year newer chassis, so a 2006 or higher.
right.
What this is going to allow us to do is we'll still be able to keep the ambulance in service, but we'll have to look at it yearly now and just do our normal maintenance. We do PM every year on the unit
Got
anyway,
it.
so.
Okay, great.
Okay?
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. The next item is the, just making sure, the village calendar. I think, hold on one sec. I just want to make sure. No, I'm sorry. The discussion of the award of contract for Epic Management. So I just want to remind you, we're voting on that next week. We are going to have Epic update their status as to their timeline, because originally, if you recall, the timeline was based on a decision being made in May, and obviously now it'll be August, beginning of September. By the beginning of September, we'll have a contract signed and in place. So we'll be getting that from them. So we're looking forward to having that contract. I know we're meeting sometime this week or next week about the contract. So we're getting that prepared for them to sign. And Epic is excited to be able to be awarded this contract. The next one is the 2019 Village Calendar. As you know, there's been a lot of conversation and planning about our central business district, and a suggested theme for the 2019 calendar is to use early photos of the CBD taken by local photographer Aaron Algian. His photographic work is extensive. We've seen a lot of it in Village Hall. We've been fortunate. Mr. Algian actually was born in Armenia, and then he came to Ridgewood in January 1909. He was 17 years old. His first photographic studio was on East Ridgewood Avenue and North Broad Street. He operated his business for 30 years in the Central Business District. He married a Ridgewood resident, and they raised their family on Meadowbrook Avenue. We actually have access to many of his photographs through the Boulder Heritage Center at the Ridgewood Library, and so that's what we're looking at doing. The council has a couple of photos from, this is actually from a 1919 supplement to the Ridgewood Herald, which is the precursor of the Ridgewood News. So I think it's probably a wonderful theme, and it's up for discussion.
For discussion, I love it.
Does it
I
sound good?
love it. I think it's beautiful.
Great idea.
And it's amazing to me in these few photos that we have so far how similar they are to the existing buildings that still grace our central business district.
This is my favorite building in Ridgewood.
Is
From
it?
here, yep. And it's one of the oldest. I think it's built in 1700s. This one here.
The next item is under policy. It's the ordinance number 3655. As you recall, we introduced this in July, and it's up for adoption next week. On page 2, there is a highlighted area about electronic vapor inhalation substance products. What we actually want to do is delete that section, and I believe that is not a substantive change because it's taking away an additional regulation. So therefore, we can do that on the floor, amend it on the floor next week, and just delete that one section, because what we're doing is we're putting the electronic everything in a separate ordinance. So to put it in this is a little bit more confusing, so we're just trying to keep them all together in one ordinance. So everyone is okay with that?
Yeah, there was just a couple typos.
we'll make sure that we get
I have,
it correct.
if you want, I
Yeah,
have a marked
sure.
up copy.
That'd be great.
I went through it.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
Sorry, Matt.
That's fine.
Mine now, so you can mark mine.
Okay. The next one is the licensing of the establishments that sell electronic smoking devices in the village. This is a draft ordinance, and I know that Mr. Rogers wanted to discuss various sections with the council. This is not the ordinance, this is going to be introduced, but I know you had some discussion items.
The only one thing I wanted to make sure everybody understood is that because we're going to be, if you go ahead with this and your intent is to try and regulate this, it does act as a zoning ordinance. It has to be passed through the planning board first before we adopt it. But you know, we can either start at the planning board or start here. And from a policy standpoint, if that's something you want to do, that's certainly something we can do, and we can draft it, take a look at it, and then adopt a resolution to send that over to the planning board for their review and consideration. So whichever way you'd like to do it.
I think we should start here and then send it and finish. This way we
Sure.
get, in terms of timing, it works a
Okay.
little more
So for
efficiently.
next Wednesday, is that what we're thinking?
Yeah, so Matt will draft one for next Wednesday introduction.
Fine.
As always, any kind of zoning kind of ordinance, it goes to the planning board, so that will be sent to them for discussion, and hopefully they can get back to us by our work session on September 5th, and then we can move forward from there. If they have any recommendations or changes,
Right.
then we can discuss them then.
Good.
Okay? All right, the next one is amendment to the A-frame sign ordinance to allow displays. So, as you recall, we had discussed this briefly in June, I think, originally. And this is, as you know, we allow A-frame signs now in the Central Business District. They're limited to a certain height, a certain width. They can't block the sidewalk area. In addition, the Village Council is desirous of having the ability for a store or restaurant to have a display. Again, there will be regulations. It can't be permanently affixed. It must be weighted. The displays can be out when the business is open. It must be brought in when it's closed. It's 5 square feet for the displays, a maximum height of 42 inches. If not affixed to a building, if temporarily affixed to a building, it's a maximum of 72 inches. It would not include merchandise for sale. They must get a permit, and it shall be enforced by various departments and employees within the village. I know that our code enforcement officer and our zoning official had recommended that this be done on a trial basis, just as the A-frame signs had, because this way we can evaluate it after 6 or 8 months, whatever you want to do, and then decide if we want to tweak it, if we want to change the application. They were requesting that we perhaps put this off until it be effective January 1st, but if you wanted effective sooner, we could certainly do that. It's just that we have to determine what kind of fee we're going to charge, because right now it's a $100 annual fee, and there's no proration. Because it's a trial period, you might want to have the $100 for the 6 or 8 months that you do the trial for. I mean, that's just a suggestion. Again, you can determine that through this discussion. So I will leave it to you to give me your input.
So I just have a question on this, because I know we met and we had a lot of discussion over this for quite some time. But on item, let me just say, on J, it says merchandise is prohibited, but we went through that with the whole dress forms and
Right.
what level of merchandise, should it be prohibited, or should it be just part of the application as to what merchandise you would display? Because that was this kind of the whole, the reason this came up is because we had merchants that were being ticketed for their displays while other displays were out and part of sidewalk cafes or whatever. And in particular, 2 were ticketed, and I think one of them has a dress form, and she has a hat that she sells, but it's tucked into that corner. So I think we have to understand that there's certain, depending on the nature of the business, their displays would vary.
Right.
Right, I think what we're trying to avoid was, and that was part of the discussion, was having people bring the store out to the street. So having, closed racks and things like that.
Correct.
Unless it's sale days, sidewalk sale days. But the idea was to have that real estate on the sidewalk that was 5 square feet.
Right, which would cause that not to happen. I think that was part of the reason that we isolated that square footage in any configuration, so it could be,
Right.
lengthwise or in a box or whatever, right?
Okay. So, as long as you're all in agreement, then we could allow it within that purview. I think specifically, though, we should prohibit like clothes racks, because you might have a very small clothes rack that could fit in that, and I think it may look a little junky, is all I'm saying.
Right.
So we could prohibit that if you're in agreement.
Yeah.
So just in definitions, would we define a clothes rack different than a dress form? That's what we would have to do, because technically a dress form could be...
Right. We could define a clothes rack. I mean, I would envision a clothes rack as something that, has a crossbar and hangers.
Right.
Correct.
Okay.
So if you're in agreement with that, we could have it reworded to state that.
And the trial period makes sense, because obviously there'll be a learning curve, there'll be an adjustment period. And, we're trying to help the businesses. We don't want to come off all of a sudden being punitive, because
Right.
the learning curve is not there. But I think if we can communicate effectively and give them a chance to implement, it will work out.
So August, September. So this wouldn't be effective until October, early October. So, but that's good. I mean, it'll be in time if they want holiday displays or whatever. So my question is, do you want to then make it to June 30th of the following year, like a 9-month type of? And we could discuss it probably in March or April and see where we're at, see what recommendations they've had. We can see what kind of displays are put out. Perhaps we'll see some displays we don't want, and we could change the ordinance at that time. Perhaps we need a little bit more definitions,
So what we could do is do exactly that, but then when we get to that June 30th, whatever date we
Right.
designate is our trial period, we could charge the $100 fee, and then just extend, once we get through the trial period and we make our changes, we could just make that to the end of whatever the October 2019. So then they'll get their full year with the $100 covered, and then they'll be in a new application process. Does that make sense? So nobody gets because otherwise you get $100 for the year for that
Right.
application. So instead of making it only, because there was no way to prorate it.
I mean, the one thing we could do is we could designate that during the trial period, it's $75, because it's 9 months out of the 12 months. And then, because ideally, probably we would want to license them for January 1st. So, if we do during the trial period, we could indicate in the ordinance it's a $75 fee through June 30th. We could then tweak anything we need to tweak, and then continue it through the end of the year. And then as of January 1st of 2020, we would have something in place definitively. Is that good?
Good.
Okay, so 75 for 9 months. Because obviously we are going to do our whole, inspection, we're going to have to do the permitting, so we want to, get some kind of revenue for that. Okay, so that's it. The next one is the proposed zoning amendments, encroachment of stairs, front yard setback. This we also had on our agenda in July. Now we have a little bit more information. And so what I wanted to say is the stair encroachment currently into the rear yard, you cannot encroach with stairs into the rear yard. Paula Perez, our zoning official, did provide us with, Assistant Zoning Officer, I want to call her the right title. She did provide us with pictures. There is one picture here of a sliding glass door with one step. Currently, that's prohibited under our zoning code, because you're not allowed to project it all into the rear yard with steps. So they would have to go for a variance for that. There's another one which shows a deck or a landing with 5 steps down. again, that would be prohibited and a variance would be required. So basically, they are just asking that it be equal to the front yard setback, which is the 60 inches, and allow it to extend into the rear yard 60 inches with stairs. So if everyone's in favor of that, we'll move forward with that one.
Yeah, I just wanted to ask a question, though. I'm kind of looking at that picture, and I'm not being picayune or anything, but the picture on Al-Anon, it's technically, that's not really a step, what's there, what's pictured.
The one on East Glen, that one?
No.
Which one? I'm sorry.
Mini platform.
It's like a mini platform. So if I were thinking step that encroaches into the rear yard.
The first one with the sliding glass door?
Yes. It's technically not a step. And if we're going to, because that in my mind could open, you would, we say that that's okay, and then somebody keeps coming out, if that were higher, that would be like a platform. So then the steps would actually have to come out deeper into the yard.
But it would only be 60 inches that they could go out, just like the front yard.
Right, now I know that, but I'm just saying it's not a step. I don't know what anybody else thinks. I just don't think it's a step.
Well, there's a step and then another step up, so there's actually 2 steps. I mean, that's up to you. If you want to regulate that, tell me, and I'll have Bridget, work on a better definition.
Yeah.
So it has to be, how many steps to be steps? 3?
So isn't this isn't a rise 9 inches? Anything anything higher than 9 inches, you have to put a step?
Okay.
We have to look at our definition.
Yeah.
I don't know it off the top of my head.
I think it's
Which is a good
9 or
question.
8, it has to equal
Right.
17. The rise and run have to equal
Right.
17. Yeah. So 9 inches would be,
Right, because that's you have a rise and you have a depth, but so technically that's not a step. By definition, that's not a step.
Okay.
But I don't know whether we have a definition.
Right, we'd have to
Yeah.
look to see if we have one. If not, I guess we could define it, but then we hold everyone to that standard,
yeah.
right?
Okay.
So, yes, you want to do that, or you're okay with it the way it is?
Just wanted to ask, did this get discussed at the planning board level yet? It did?
No, it has not been.
Okay.
No, did it? What, did we discuss
I don't know.
this?
Was it discussed at the planning board? It was.
It was?
Jeff is saying
Yeah,
yeah.
no, I'm saying, I don't remember. I may not have been there if it was. I don't
It was.
recall.
Did they have any comments
But did they have a definition?
that you recall?
No, I don't think they did have a definition.
Okay.
I'm going to just get the minutes to the meeting. But
Okay.
I actually don't remember when it was
Okay.
discussed. Do you remember when?
Probably a while.
4 or 5 months ago, something like that.
Probably a while. Okay, so we'll look to see if there's a definition of step, what that might be, and then we can, if it is the 9 inches, is that what you said, for each rise?
See what they say.
Okay, for rise, okay. The next one is for locations in the B1 and B2 zones, and the fact that there's a front yard setback, and currently it says, all new buildings and additions to existing buildings shall conform to the existing established front yard setback line of the buildings located on each side of the subject property. However, we don't have a specific minimum dimension for situations where there are no adjacent buildings. So what is recommended, that a minimum setback be where there are no adjacent buildings to provide for a front yard dimension. So what the recommendation is for B1 interior lots, have a minimum front yard setback of 0 feet. A B1 corner lot, minimum front yard setback of 5 feet. B2 interior lot, minimum front yard setback of 5 feet. And a B2 corner lot shall have a minimum front yard setback of 10 feet. So that's the recommendation from the planner. And there is a particular place currently that is on a corner, does not have adjacent buildings, and wishes to add an addition to allow for a cooler it's a restaurant, in the restaurant. So in order to do so, they need to know how to measure it.
So this is what we discussed at the planning board, the steps
Okay.
in the B1, B2, and B3R. This is the one we discussed.
Okay.
I don't believe we ever
Okay.
discussed this. See, I think that this is the one we discussed, was the downtown, and the CBD, the steps on the, in the,
What I recall with the first one was that we had actually a house that wanted to do steps in the backyard, and we had a discussion about that. I don't know whether or not we ultimately decided on changing the ordinance,
right.
but we did have a discussion about that house and whether or not it could have a back stairs. So,
I don't know. We definitely discussed this one, but I don't know. We'll find out. We'll get the minutes and find out.
Okay. Okay, so everyone's okay with this front yard setback where there are no adjacent buildings in B1 and B2? Okay, that's good. The next one is memorializing changes to the bus stops. We have, well, specifically Route 17, but periodically New Jersey Transit comes to us and asks us to memorialize bus stops that exist and also to put the New Jersey Transit route numbers on it. And so Mr. Weathersauser has updated our ordinance to include the newer bus stops. There's one between West Saddle River Road and the pedestrian overpass at Route 17, and then also a couple along Route 17 southbound. So this is just, again, done periodically upon request of New Jersey Transit, and once adopted, it's forwarded to the Bergen County Department of Planning. Okay? The next one is the bus station at Van Ness Square. I think I'm going to have Mr. Weathersauser come up for this one. As we know, the existing bus shelter at Van Ness Square, which is the bus stop there, is owned and maintained by the village. The existing bus shelter is in poor condition, has at times become a nuisance because sometimes we have people hanging out there. I hate to say it, but there's defecation, urination, and vomit found within the bus shelter often. Several of the building's structural parts are exhibiting severe decay, and most likely we'd have to replace the entire shelter within the next year or two. New Jersey Transit has offered to help us by installing 6 Type D bus shelters. If you look at the last page, it shows you what a Type D bus shelter looks like. It would be 6 of them put together, and it would be on a concrete slab at the site of the existing bus shelter. We would provide for the suitable concrete slab, and also we would remove the existing building. This would prevent people from just hanging out in the bus shelter, obviously, and also the other things that go on in there. The village would also need to execute a maintenance agreement with New Jersey Transit. So I know that our police department would be very desirous of getting rid of the bus shelter, and that they are often the ones who are called when there are issues in that shelter. And if it were visible, which is, enclosed by glass, it's very difficult to do those types of things. So it's up for discussion.
You have to do something with the building anyway, and if it's a problem, then this is probably a solution to the problem, as long as, it fits appropriately and is aesthetically pleasing, then I say get rid of the building.
So do we actually gain parking in the parking lot by doing this?
I don't believe so, because the concrete slab that's going to be required for the 6 Type D shelters that Transit is proposing is going to take approximately the same amount of area as the current bus shelter building. And do we need 6? They originally looked at it and they had recommended more, but then budget constraints set in and they could only do 6, and that's what they came back with to us. And I mean, do we have a choice? Can we say we'll do 2 where the current front part of the shelter is, and then put parking behind it? We could, but it's not going to have very much capacity. These are smaller shelters. A recent example that we just did with New Jersey Transit at the behest of a resident, we put a shelter at southbound North Monroe just north of West Glen by the tennis courts, because that's a bus shelter, a bus stop, and the resident had explained that many times they wait a long time there, and they were desirous of a shelter, and we worked with Transit to do that. We constructed the concrete slab, they installed the shelter. Ironically, in the review process, Transit found out that there is a locally identified historic something or another in the vicinity. So we had to go from the shelter we selected and the color we selected to one that was acceptable in the eyes of historic preservation, which was what was constructed out there.
So the type D shelter, is that like black metal? Is that what?
I think it's more like a dark green. We can confirm what color would be acceptable both to Transit and in the context of the business district.
Okay.
So Chris, what's the purpose of the bus shelter? The reason it was built in the first place, is it to keep people warm in the wintertime?
Not really warm,
Right,
warm in one way. It's not really heated, but it just keeps people out of the elements.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, as some of the photographs that I believe were in the submittal I made to Heather show, there is at times a vagrancy problem. And as Heather said, it gets worse. The current shelter is in poor structural condition and will need to be replaced at some time in the next couple of years. I reached out to Transit to see what they could do, and this is what they've come back for the Village Council's consideration.
And so those particular shelters, the way they're designed, will keep people kind of protected from the elements?
Well, the Type D will keep you protected from the elements. You'll stay relatively dry.
Yeah.
You'll have some protection from the wind, but it's not going to be toasty warm.
Okay.
So, because that part of the thought there is give you shelter for the time a bus picks you up and takes you to your destination, but not make it so comfortable that you spend a day there.
Yeah, okay. All
So,
right, thanks.
Chris, how many openings is it going to have? You can't really tell from the picture.
I believe I submitted to Heather a picture of a Type D shelter there, and I have one before me. It is quite open. It has glass walls on the backside, and I'm not quite sure of the configuration with 6 of these units together, but they will be relatively open.
So, I stood in a similar shelter for many years at the Harriman train station, and the way that they have it is it's almost like it's enclosed on 3 sides and then there's an opening. So when it got really cold, you were sheltered from the cold because there wasn't wind coming in and out. So do we have any
That would be the
ability
intent.
to-
Get the person waiting out of the wind, but not make it too comfortable.
Yeah, because this looks like the wind's just going to go right, you know.
Well,
and
they're
it'll
going
cold.
to be nestled together. I don't believe the wind is going to blow completely through them.
I mean, this picture here, is this the one you're talking about? It looks like it's completely open except for 2 panels in the center.
That looks like it has the front panel, rear panel, and side panels. But it does have 2,
This is open.
1/3 open, 1/3 closed, 1/3 open approximately in the front.
And have we or the police tracked how many people, on average are in the shelter in the winter?
At the request of Heather, I did get some statistics on bus usage. Unfortunately, there's very difficult to break that down as to how many people lay over, wait for any period of time in the shelter. I don't know if we have that data available to us, not from New Jersey Transit.
So is this saying, this is from New Jersey Transit, that this location handles 128 passengers daily? Is that?
I believe, I don't have those numbers committed to memory. If that's the information I sent to Heather and she forwarded to you, then that's it.
Is that what I'm understanding? That's what New Jersey Transit is saying is our daily passengers boarding there?
Yeah, that's how I read it.
That doesn't seem like many.
Chris, do they have other shelters that are a little bit more substantial than what you've shown? And just to kind of protect them more from if it gets really cold?
We can ask, but this is what they recommend and what they have the budget for. I mean, again, if the council would like a more substantial shelter, we can always build one as a capital project.
Any idea how much that might cost?
I would say in the $70,000 to $100,000 range.
So, I mean, I'm just going to mention the Harriman one again, only because it's not that big, but it's effective.
Where was
Yeah.
it, Bernie?
It's right at the Harriman train station.
Harriman?
Yeah, Harriman, New York, so it would have been
Okay.
Metro North, but it like is the perfect size, and it definitely shelters you from, so it's almost like it's 3 sides and then 3/4 of a 4th side, and it's just got the open, and, you know, everybody kind of goes in and stands and huddles and stays warm, and then, but you don't really get the wind that you'll definitely get from this on a bed, and even rain. This is, the rains can just like come right in.
Well, the last
You
time
know,
we did a
just drive
shelter,
it
though,
in.
they gave us, we had shelters to select from. There were different designs, right?
That was for the one on North Monroe I mentioned.
Right, well, and I thought one on 17, didn't we do one on
The one on
17?
17 was, I don't think we had that many options in the selection process on that one.
So maybe they'll, just get a couple of different options.
Yeah.
Maybe we'll get a photo of it.
Yeah.
Okay.
We can take a look at the one that you mentioned and see if they have something similar.
Yeah. Bet you can pull it up on the...
So is everyone in favor of it? Given, if we can make sure that it's sheltered, as Councilwoman Walsh mentioned?
Yep.
Okay, great.
You could probably pull it up on the...
What I'll do is, I'll communicate with Transit to see if they can give us a better drawing as how the 6 units would be connected to each other, and maybe that could better show how they be, an individual standing in there or sitting in there would be shielded from the elements.
That would help. Okay, so our last item under operations is the 2019 Village Council meeting dates. We always do it this time of year so that we can put together the calendar as well as I go out for bid for our minutes. So in January, the first Wednesday in the month is January 2nd. This is the day after the holiday. The recommendation is to move every meeting forward 1 week, so it would be January 9th, the 16th, and the 30th. And the only other recommendation is in July, because the first Wednesday of the month is July 3rd, because we all have a big day, July 4th. The recommendation is to push those 2 meetings forward 1 week, so July 10th and July 17th. So all the other dates don't fall on holidays, don't need to be moved. So as long as you're okay with moving the meetings in January and July, these will be the meetings we'll go with. Everyone's okay with them? Yep. That's easy, good. Okay, so I have a review of next week's public meeting. We have various proclamations, drive sober, get pulled over, 2018 statewide crackdown through our police department, declaring September Ovarian Cancer Awareness Month, and declaring September National Preparedness Month. We have no ordinances for introduction or public hearing for Ridgewood Water. We have resolutions for Ridgewood Water, award the partial contract for Southside Reservoir rehabilitation, amend the current contract for pipe appurtenances and service materials, award professional services contract for Passaic Valley Water Commission pipeline project, and award professional services contract for the W4 licensing coverage for Ridgewood Water. We have several introduction of ordinances, amending Chapter 265, Vehicles and Traffic for the parking meter times at the train station and park and ride. We have amending Chapter 265 for Vehicles and Traffic, the parking on Overbrook Road. We have amending Chapter 265 for Vehicles and Traffic for establishing multi-space kiosks in new locations. We have amending the capital ordinance for reappropriation of funding for stretcher for EMS, capital fund ordinance, stretchers, I should say, capital ordinance 1 hook lift body with accessories for the Parks Department, capital ordinance for reappropriation of funds for reconfiguration of the train station parking lot, establishing licensing of sellers of electronic smoking devices, amending Chapter 190 for allowing displays in the Central Business District, amending Chapter 190 for permitted encroachment of stairs into rear yard, amending Chapter 190 for front yard setback in B2 district, and amending Chapter 265, vehicles and traffic for bus stops. Public hearing of ordinances, amending the valet parking ordinance, amending Chapter 105 for animals, establishing the position of municipal humane law enforcement officer, amending Chapter 244 for smoking, amending Chapter 265, vehicles and traffic, no left turn into and out of the driveway for Starbucks, amending Chapter 265, vehicles and traffic, no turn from North Maple Avenue into the exit driveway of 305 East Ridgewood Avenue, amending the ordinance for enforcement for dead and dangerous trees, amending the outdoor cafe ordinance, enforcement of rules and regulations, amending Chapter 265, vehicles and traffic, parking meter times, amending Chapter 145, fees for parking meter rates. We have Title 59 approval, furnishing and delivering sodium bisulfite solution and sodium hypochlorite solution, and also the award of contract for that. We have Title 59 approval and award of contract for furnishing laboratory analysis services for the Water Pollution Control Facility and the Graden Pool Facility, awarding contract under state contract for portable radios for the Police Department, award contract under state contract for 2018 Chevrolet Tahoes, award contract under state contract for emergency lights and equipment for police vehicles, awarding contract under state contract for the, I think it was the radio equipment for the Tahoes, award contract under Bergen County contract for the Western Star chassis for the Parks Department, award contract under Bergen County contract for Toro Groundmaster lawnmower, awarding the contract for the HVAC upgrade to Village Hall, award professional services contract and designate a redeveloper for the Hudson Street parking garage, declare property surplus, police bulletproof vests, and also designating municipal, what's it called, animal humane law enforcement officers. So we're designating, and again, those are employees of Tyco, Animal Control. Any of those do you want off of the consent? Okay, go ahead.
Heather, we had discussed during the week the possibility of considering a resolution in response to resolutions that had been adopted by Wyckoff and Midland Park in regard to the operation of the water utility. Mm-hmm. And I don't know whether you wanted to get that on for next week or...
Do you think it'll be ready?
Well, I don't know if it would be ready. It may or may not. It depends upon how we get all the information together. But I don't know, maybe I should just talk about it briefly.
Sure, please.
I don't mean to interrupt the end of the meeting, but at the same time, since our hearings with regard to the public hearings on the rate ordinances, the Township of Wyckoff, Borough of Midland Park, adopted resolutions that deal with the fact that they would like a utility authority be set up so that they have a say in the determination, investigation, consideration, and approval of rates for the Ridgewood water. In the resolutions that they wrote, they said that the village council has not been accountable to ratepayers of the other three towns. They also said that the Ridgewood Council does not view their role as fiduciaries to the water ratepayers who do not elect them and who suffer the consequences of their actions. And they want a right to be in the process of approval. They were provided, the village was provided with copies of those resolutions. And we had a meeting earlier in the week where we talked about a potential response with regard to that position, not only from the standpoint of this proposed municipal utility authority, that all of a sudden they want a chance to be a part of the approval process, where the village has always taken on the risk and the authority and the costs and expenses with regard to that, but to accuse us of not being accountable to ratepayers and not viewing our role with fiduciary obligation to all ratepayers of the utility, I think it warrants a response. But We did discuss it with the possibility of adopting a resolution, putting forth some of the positions that we might have with regard to any consideration that might be given to a municipal utility authority, which would involve certain conditions that we might even think about if they are willing to commit funds to buy back an interest, because we had purchased the infrastructure, purchased the authority to do this many years ago, when all those three towns wanted to relinquish any authority or any involvement in the operation of it. And we had to pay money for that. They have been sitting back all these years and had given us that authority, and now they want to be a part of the approval process without having made any type of a contribution with regard to that. You know, in issues such as enforcement of water restriction ordinances, because they haven't even participated in that aspect of it. You know, it's a, you know, sort of like asking for the car without ever having to pay for gas. You know, dealing with something like that you've got a teenager at home. So in that regard, I think we've got.
Somebody's asked me that before.
Always get that question. So with the council's consideration, I think we may want to consider a resolution, and you can adopt it if you want. You don't have to adopt it, but I was going to prepare one which may be responsive to this in a more comprehensive and global way.
Yeah, I think a response is definitely warranted. I mean, I wouldn't call those things resolutions, more of, you know, accusations. I mean, it was to read through was tough to get through. But I think, you know, a lot of good points were brought up in the discussion, but we need to you know, the response is going to be factual. I think that's number one. And second, I think it's important to establish the relationship that was essentially established when we purchased those assets from, and the type of control that you give up, that you relinquish to the village of Ridgewood when you sold those assets to us, the water utility. I think it's important to establish that, because I think that's at the basis of, you know, the foundation of where this is coming from. But the accusations that we don't have a fiduciary responsibility or view ourselves as fiduciaries as ratepayers, again, it's ridiculous. It's
one thing to ask for a seat at the table. It's another thing to accuse us of not appreciating the fiduciary obligation and responsibility that's been the operation of this water utility for some 30, 40 years at least. Mm-hmm. So I think in that regard, to accuse us of that is really a disingenuous comment.
So Matt, to the mayor's point, do we know how much it's going to cost them to buy back their assets?
No.
And as well to invest in some of the infrastructure moving forward, which is going to be substantial.
That's some of the things that we're looking at, and that's why Heather had asked, are we really going to have that ready? And if we don't have it ready and that information for next Wednesday, then it will be the following public meeting that will deal with it.
I mean, that's got to be a lot of money. I mean,
it certainly is.
They want to pony that up. I mean, I'm interested to see whether they would say.
Well, I think it's something that we ought to consider.
Yeah.
I just would say that would be against having this at next week's meeting. Next week is a public meeting. I am adamantly opposed to doing that at the next public meeting without having a real opportunity to digest all the information and really having a lot of meat in this and conversation. I think that to do it for next week is.
It may be too quick, but as long as you're on board with regard to the preparation of a resolution and looking at it from that standpoint. It doesn't have to be next meeting, but if it can be prepared by then and we got it all together.
We can discuss it September 5th.
We can discuss it September 5th.
And then, if everyone's agreeing to it, or we can make changes, discuss it, make changes if necessary, and then September 12th, we could do a resolution.
And one of the reasons, just so you know, one of the reasons why we wanted to make sure that we did it as quickly as possible, but as thoroughly as possible, is that we don't know when the next time this matter is going to get back before the court, before the trial court, on the rate ordinances that we adopted, and that we felt that it would be important if this issue comes up at that time, that the council's adoption of a resolution in opposition and answer to what the other two towns already did would be helpful, rather than to say to the court that we're in the process of doing that now. So, because that information that we intend on putting in here would be very helpful to the court to understand what's gone on and what this is a part of, so.
Right, got it.
Okay, so I believe we're at manager's report. So I just want to remind everyone the Ridgewood Guild is sponsoring Music in the Night, providing live music throughout the Central Business District on Friday nights through the end of August. Please come down to the Central Business District Friday nights. It's a wonderful time, and they have usually between 6 and 8 different performers. It's really lovely. The Castro Shell presents live music in the summer every Tuesday and Thursday nights on Veterans Field. This year, Age-Friendly Ridgewood has provided funding for the transportation of senior citizens each week through our senior bus. There are 3 programs left. August 2nd, tomorrow evening, Andy Cooney Band, which is Irish Night. August 7th, the Bishop and his Abbots, Rio Clemente, which is jazz. And August 9th is Mac Brandon and The Connection, which is popular gospel. All programs start at 8:30 p.m. and they're free to the public. If any seniors need transportation, please call the village manager's office to make a reservation for a free bus ride, both there and back to the Castro Shell performance. The Zabriskie Shedler House on May 23rd, our historic preservation consultants sent a formal National Register nomination for the John A. L. Zabriskie House to the New Jersey Historic Preservation Office for their review. We anticipate a response by early fall. Starting tomorrow, the Chamber of Commerce Sidewalk Sale Days will begin. They'll take place at member stores. There is something for everyone and a great time for bargains. After shopping, enjoy dining in one of our great restaurants. And if the rain continues, the sales will continue inside the stores. The Ridgewood Recreation Day Camp will complete another great season this Friday, and we had over 400 children participating this year. Graydon Pool, as we know, provides many aquatic opportunities, including swim and diving lessons for all levels. I'm happy to report that last week the Graydon swim team won first place in the end-of-season Community Swim League meet. Graydon Pool late season hours will start August 13th through Labor Day, September 3rd. Weekday hours are noon to 7:30 p.m. and weekends, holidays, 10 a.m. to 7:30 p.m. Late season membership badges are available to Ridgewood residents starting today, actually August 1st, to the end of the season. Adults 16 to 61 years is $60, and children 2 to 15 years is $55. Family movie on the beach, Cars 3, Friday, August 10th at sundown. Admission is $5 per person, cash only. Bring a flashlight, chair, or a blanket. The Water's Edge Cafe will be open for movie treats. Ridgewood Recreation has a wide variety of camps available for the rest of the summer for all ages, including tennis instruction, arts and crafts, mini camp, multi-sports camps, skateboarding, golf, rumble in the jungle with abracadoodle, little bits engineering and robotics with Explore Science, extreme STEAM with Education Explorer, science-related challenges, and lacrosse for 5 to 7-year-olds. I want to remind everyone that there is a summer discount ticket program, discount tickets to many recreational destinations, such as Hershey Park, Six Flags Great Adventure, Wild Safari, Dorney Park and Wildwater Kingdom, Medieval Times, Crayola Experience. We do have discount tickets at the Ridgewood Recreation Department, which is located in the stable, so please stop by and get your discount tickets. That's it. Oh, no, I have one more thing. I'd like to thank the Ridgewood Board of Education. They received $1 million in state aid, so the Board of Education has decided to put $500,000 of that towards tax reduction. So therefore, the original tax increase on an average assessed home was $490.63. Now, the actual is actually $314.25. So, and this is on the average assessed home of $696,000. So, thank you to the Board of Education for putting it towards tax reduction.
Council reports?
Thank you, Mayor.
You got it.
Well, if it wasn't for Monday, I wouldn't have anything, but Monday was a very busy day. So I'd just like to start out by saying I began the day in the Central Business District. The Shade Tree Commission hired a consultant, Andy Hillman, who came down from Ithaca, and we walked around and looked at a lot of the condition of the trees and tree wells downtown, and we should be receiving a report or information on suggestions moving forward, how to redesign the tree wells. So I'd like to thank Chris Rutheshauser, the village engineer, and Declan Madden, the arborist, who showed up to take for a portion of the tour with us. I'd also like to thank Shade Tree Commissioner Andrew Lowry, who showed up, and Commissioners Susan Michelle, Carolyn Jacoby, and Ian Keller. So there are about 15 to 20% of the tree wells right now are empty, and unfortunately there's going to be a lot more that are going to be empty in the next couple of years, because a lot of the existing trees are in really bad condition. So the reason we're going through this exercise is because if you look downtown, there's not many big mature trees that are providing good shade for people. There are all these little trees because they don't last much past 4 or 5 years. So by improving the conditions of the tree wells downtown, it actually saves us money down the road, because you don't have to keep replacing these trees, and it's even better because then the trees that will survive and grow will eventually be big enough to provide shade for us, and then it'll enhance the experience downtown, and there's a whole host of benefits for that. So we started downtown at 9 and came back to Village Hall around 12:30, and then around 2 I went on the Water Department tour with Director Rich Calby and Village Manager Heather Maylander. So I'd like to thank them and all the great Water Department employees. The department's really run by a good group of guys and girls, and they're doing an incredible job on some of the technology that they're producing, and really moving the water department forward and doing an excellent job with that. So it was very informative. It was an exciting tour, and it was a busy day, and that's my report.
All right, thank you. Deputy Mayor.
So, grand opening, July 20th of AR Workshop at 44 Franklin Avenue, which is the old Planet Swirl. Now, anyone who wants to go and check out AR Workshop, it is a boutique do-it-yourself studio that offers hands-on classes for creating custom, charming home decor from raw materials. You can join an instructor-led class and workshop where you make custom wood planks, frame signs, canvas pillows, round signs, lazy Susans, even though there's really no such thing, centerpiece boxes, canvas tote bags, and more. So if you want to take a look over by the old Planet Swirl, 44 Franklin Avenue, welcome AR Workshop, arworkshop.com. It was really very sweet business, and really very cool, actually. Lots of kid programs, kid crafts to do as well. So anything custom, it's really nice. Home decor. And the other thing I have is, I believe it was last Wednesday, the Master Plan Advisory Committee met for a very wet, rainy tour of our Central Business District with our consultants from NV5, myself, Melanie McWilliams, Richard Joel, and Joel Torrielli. We worked with them throughout the entire downtown, and so we're going to actually start scheduling for September and October for our visioning process, which is our community-wide workshop, and we're really excited to get started. We'll be meeting with them next week, and then we're moving forward. So that's it. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilman Walsh.
So the only thing that I have, and I'm just going to be brief on it, I had my first library board meeting last week, and they welcomed me to their group and talked about the renovation at the library. But the process and the project themselves, they're going to come and present to the village council, because they are going to request that the council bond for the construction. So I recommended to them that they should really get as much information as they can, get a timeline, and come and meet with us and really explain to us what the process is, how they're going to raise funds, how they are going to manage the library while it's closed. There was just so much data that I just felt that that to really give an overview of it this evening wouldn't do them justice, and really it should come from them. So I think that they were coordinating with Donna and Heather about the date that they're going to come, and
I think it's September 26th, which is our second work session in September.
Okay,
That's
so
the plan.
so the reason that they have to come to us and have the discussion and really start planning it, that there is a state match that we are eligible for. It's the first time that this match has been available, I think, in 20 years. So they want to be able to write a letter of intent so that we would even be considered for this match. So they're going to come to us and have a full discussion on it. And
that match is a big number, right?
well, it's a 50% match. So the construction is upwards of $8 million. So that would be $4 million, plus or minus $4 million. So
Well, it's up to 50%, no? Is it
up to 50%?
Up to 50%,
yeah,
okay.
yeah. So they have a possibility. That was really the only thing that we talked about at the library meeting. So. And then I met with the library director. We did a tour of the library, and she kind of gave me more of a visual from the diagrams that they have as to what's going to happen there. So it was a fun tour. And then I too had the tour of the water company today. It rained at the beginning, and then the sun came out at the end. So it was great. It was a great meeting.
Thank you, Mayor. I met with the Community Center Advisory Board leaders last Monday, Sheila Brogan, Beth Abbott, Sue Ulrich, and Don Liebrick. I understand you met with them as well. Thank you for doing that. Appreciate that. Extremely vibrant group. They would like to come present to the Village Council in the fall on what they've been doing over the past year or so as it relates to some of their initiatives. They had several issues that they did raise, concerns. One of them was the usability of the village website, need for additional transportation and the use of the van for some of the people at, say, Ridgecrest. They're a bit concerned about the walkability of the downtown in light of the upcoming developments, most especially the Ridgecrest residents walking to downtown. They have to kind of do a circuitous route across the train plank and then go down under stairs and around, so it's a little bit difficult for them to get downtown. They have some upcoming speaker events. I think it'll take place at the library. One is October 2nd, which is learning about reverse mortgages with Ron Romano, who's the Bergen County Reverse Mortgage Counselor. October 26th, they'll be talking about Medicare Part D, prescription coverage. Sheila Brogan will be talking about that. Sheila is on the Board of Education, also a geriatric social worker. November 4th, they'll be talking about forgetfulness and dementia with Sheila Brogan. We'll also be talking about that. December 11th, they have a session on elder law with Irina Shea from Elder Law, his elder law attorney. Met with Gary Cirillo, head of Project Pride, this past Tuesday. I have to admit that Gary does a lot with a little money in helping to keep our downtown look very good. Just a couple of his observations, which are of note. His observation is that we have a lot of people biking into downtown, most especially on the weekends. We may need some more bike racks, most especially at the train station, which appear to be full on the weekends, and as well possibly a bike rack at the clock on East Ridgewood Avenue. He suggested we also might put a slab for the bike racks themselves, so when you put your bike up there, it's fairly sturdy. He suggested we may need some more Christmas balls for hanging on the west side of town, and reminded us to ensure that we keep our sidewalks clean, especially in the central business district. Also met with the water department today. I got to tell you, I'm impressed with the level of detail they have that have at their fingertips in making decisions. I think they're well ahead of the curve, which is extremely impressive. Some of the stuff they do with artificial intelligence, and adjusting pumps and pressures of the water going through the system, I just think are just light years ahead of what everybody else is doing. So they're doing some really good work. Very impressed, and thank you for doing that, Dan. So that's it.
Thank you. Yeah, I too took the tour of the water company. Very impressed with the resourcefulness of the staff and working their magic. And it's been such a long process, and it's so great to see now, how it's all coming on together. A lot of collaboration. It seems like everybody works well together. Very impressed with how the artificial intelligence works in regulating the pumps. I think one of the comments was that the one of the guys who's there watching it in the night shift says, "Thank you, I can actually go to the bathroom because I don't have to sit there and watch the pumps. It kind of regulates itself." So, but it was a great tour. I continue to think that under the leadership of Rich Calby, the water department is doing extremely well and will continue to get even better. So I'm very happy with that. Last week, in case you missed it, there was a soft opening of Jack's Lobster Shack in town, 194 East Ridgewood Avenue. Whew. Great place, good addition to the downtown. It's also nicer to see a restaurant that's a little bit more towards, towards Maple Avenue, spread apart from the cluster of restaurants that we have up near the train station. So it was nice to see. I had the opportunity to attend the 28th anniversary celebration of the Americans with Disability Act at Ridgecrest. It was a really nice event. We had a lot of representatives there from Age-Friendly Ridgewood, Community Access Network. We also had James Thievery from the Bergen County's Division on Disability Services. And it was a wonderful event. The Ridgecrest residents were very welcoming. We had a we had some great discussions from the Bergen County Division about all the services that are available to our residents. So I was very happy to be there, and I want to thank Stu Ulrich for giving me the opportunity to join them and spend a nice brunch with them. Been out to Graydon the last couple of weeks. Just a coincidence of really hot weather and also having a little bit of time with the kids. And I have to say, it looks great. It was amazing, and I know that Heather sent us an update on the visibility of the water, and it was 14 and a half feet, which is basically the entire depth of the pool, of the deepest part of the pool, which we don't normally even get at the beginning of the season. And the water looked magnificent. It was awesome, and my kids loved it. It was great. And then just wanted to just remind everyone the next week, on Thursday the 9th, the Central Business District Advisory Committee will be meeting here in the Garden Room. We have invited the landlords, the commercial landlords in town, to come join for a discussion. Just as sort of a brainstorming session. This is not a pity committee or complaint session. This is to really get down and talk about what are the things that are important. I've had the chance now to starting to have individual meetings as well with them, and talking about some of the things that we can do together. Trying to see if we can move, some of the restaurants down to the other side of Ridgewood Avenue, just to kind of ease the congestion that we have up top. Also talking about some of the concerns that they have, which really right now, one of the biggest is regarding zoning. We have this issue with the B1 versus B2, and a lot of the businesses that have expressed interest in the vacant storefronts now would be now considered sort of B2 tenants. So we need to work something out. I know I've spoken to Brigitte. There's something that we had taken up, Deputy Mayor and I, with Brigitte, our planner, a few months ago, so we continue to do that. And that's it. That's all I have.
Just before we close, I just want to also echo what all the council said. We split up the tours of the water department so that we didn't have a quorum. And so they did 4 tours, separate tours. I want to thank all of our water department employees who gave us a great insight into the technology that we have. I think it's amazing that many of the applications that we do have been developed in-house, which has saved us tens of thousands of dollars. We also have a newer employee who is using data that he's collected and been able to put into programming that will allow us to better forecast when our assets need to be replaced. So I think that the budgeting for the capital part for the water department is going to be very much on point, and certainly we'll know when we need to replace our various assets that we have, whether it be a chlorinator or a main or a valve or a hydrant. And I think that going forward, we're just leaps and bounds ahead of many of the surrounding water departments as far as our assets and in other regards too. So thank you to all the water employees who took their time to give all these tours, and thank you to Rich Calby and Dan Timoney who also joined us on all those tours. And also our SCADA system and Jose Leon who did a great job, and Neil Galone and Rob Kearney and Xiaoying Huang. So thank you very much for your time, and I was impressed when I took the tour, and I felt that the council would benefit from it, so I appreciate your time and taking your time to take a look at it.
Thank you. All right, we'll go back to public comments, 5 minutes per person.
Good evening, Boyd Loving, 342 South Irving Street. As the mayor said, the water quality at Graydon this year has been absolutely superb. In fact, Mr. Mayor, I don't know if you know that the day you were there, we were right next to you, and somebody had lost something in the deep end, and there was a guard who was able to spot it standing from the chair and looked down and dived into the water and retrieved it. So it was at the bottom of, I guess, whether it's 12 or 14 feet down. They were able to see it just standing on the guard's platform and able to retrieve it. That's basically unheard of. So who's ever responsible for making sure that the water quality at Graydon is good is doing an excellent job this year. While Mr. Rooney is still here, I'd just like to comment about the proposed installation of the kiosks. I'm not sure if we're getting the same kiosks that they have in Hoboken, but you talked about going to and from your car. In Hoboken, once you put your money in the kiosk, you do not have to put a receipt in the car. The attendant, the parking enforcement officer, has a device, and they know whether you've put money in the kiosk based upon the fact that you have to put your license plate number in the kiosk. So there is no going back and forth. You go to the kiosk, and then you can basically go on your way. So hopefully we're getting the same type of kiosk that you do not have to go back to your car and then place a receipt in the windshield. I was walking through town early one morning, and I do note that the collection process for the meters remains the same in many places, in that some of the meters were not able to be retrofitted with the devices that ensured that the person who's collecting the money can't get it out of the meter. Some of the meters were retrofitted with that device, others were not. So there are still places within the CBD where money, you can see the cash actually being dumped from the coin box into the device they use to move around and hold the coins before they take it back to the truck. So my thought is that we should be promoting the installation of kiosks throughout the village, so that we can relieve ourselves of this risk factor that there is still an opportunity to snatch money out there. And I'm not trying to disparage any of our employees. I don't think that that's happening, but who knows, somebody could come by, a thief could come by and hit somebody on the head and walk off with that cash. So my suggestion would be to, if things work out with the kiosk that you already have on order and are planning to install, to try to get this in throughout the CBD, throughout the village as fast as you can. The more opportunity we have to remove the opportunity for theft, the better off we will be. With respect to the bus terminal, I'm not sure why we don't have a camera up there. If people are defecating, urinating, if they're fist fights, let's put a camera up there so that we can find out who they are and charge them. Even if you demolish the building and put in what New Jersey Transit is recommending, I would still suggest that you put a camera up there. If it's a hangout, if it's a place where people go to create trouble, let's find out who those people are and take steps to
to eradicate the situation. About building our own, I remind you that this building that's right out here cost $400,000, these bathrooms. I do not think that the council at the time was told that the number was going to be anywhere near that. So I get nervous when Mr. Rodeschauser says, oh, I think between 60 and 70, because 60 and 70 has an opportunity, or in this village, sometimes those things get tripled. So my suggestion is take New Jersey Transit's offer and be done with it. Otherwise, you might wind up with the proverbial golden toilet situation like we have across the way. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening again. Ann Loving, 342 South Irving Street. I just had one comment about the lawnmower that's being purchased for $26,000. That number just seems outrageously expensive to me. I looked online while the meeting was going on, and the most expensive riding mower that I could find online was $7,299. So I just commenting that $26,000 for a riding mower seems really pricey. Thank you.
Thank you. Anybody else? Okay, just wanted to, because I know there were some questions that were asked at the beginning of the meeting. Ms. Loving, you had asked about Health Barn, and there was a series of things that you had kind of read on social media. We do have staff. We actually have a Parks and Rec office inside the building. So we do have staff that we had talked about kind of supervising the activities there. But what we'll do is, because there's a lot of questions that came up, just kind of get back to you with the answer to the questions that you asked in terms of the, I know it was the number of kids, the lease areas being used, and any vehicles, and the policy for the consumption of alcohol on the premises. So we'll get back to you with that. And just to the point of the kiosks that Mr. Loving raised, that the kiosks that we're using is the same ones, that same technology as the one that are being used in Hoboken. It's the same one that's in the Chestnut Street lot now. It's a license plate reader technology. So yeah, you're not required to go back to your car to put anything in the car. The concern and the question that came about was for individuals that have mobility issues. If you're parking in the lot, it's not so much of an inconvenience because you're going to enter the lot and have to exit it to go to wherever you're going, and you have to walk by the kiosk. The concern was on the street. If we can't place one every 5 feet. If we have one sort of in the middle of the block or at the end of the block, if you have someone with mobility issues, to have to go perhaps out of their way and then have to go back to wherever it is that they're going just to go and pay the kiosk. So it's just more for people who have the mobility issues. And thank you for the suggestion on security camera for the bus station. I think it's good practice. I think even as a security measure, I think it would be good to have. So thank you.
Absolutely.
So with that, we'll close public comment and we'll take a resolution to go into closed session.
Be it resolved by the Village Council of the Village of Ridgewood that the Village Council meet in closed session on August 1st, 2018 at 7:30 p.m. or as soon thereafter as the matter on the agenda can be reached, and that said closed session be held in the caucus room of the Ridgewood Village Hall, 131 North Maple Avenue, Ridgewood, New Jersey. Be it further resolved that the matters to be discussed in closed session are limited to legal matters to include potential property purchase, personnel matters to include the Water Department. These matters are allowable under NJSA 10:4-12 et sec. Be it further resolved that the minutes of this meeting shall be made available to the general public when such matters have been deemed completed by resolution of the Village Council. May I have a motion?
So move.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Nope. Thank you.